What to do with a large influx of cash. Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets. You've received a lump sum of money, whether it's a insurance payout, a investment that's paid out, a cashback, for example. I loan money to real estate investors, and when they sell a property, they might pay a loan in full all of a sudden. What about a reserve fund that has gotten to peak, and now you have a large fund of $60, $70, even $100,000 in cash, and you need to do something with it immediately? And God forbid, what about inheritance? You maybe received money from a relative that has recently passed away. What do you do with those funds? Well, if you're using the Sustainable Wealth Secrets, the first thing you're going to do is reserve that money based according to your cash management plan. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not definitive. I know you're searching the internet, what to do with a lot of cash, and you're seeing the things that are out there for the average consumer. And most people are going to tell you, especially stockbrokers, especially people who have things to sell, they're going to say it's now time for that big purchase. Oh, you got that lump sum of cash, get a new house. Oh, you got that lump sum of cash, let's go ahead and pay off debt. You got a lump sum of cash, let's go ahead and invest it in the stock market. Listen, the best thing you can do is nothing at all out of the ordinary. Now, some people take that lump of cash and they put it in a checking account and they let it sit and they let it ride, because really, if you think about it, $60,000, $70,000, even $100,000 really isn't a lot of money for a high-income professional to receive. And if you're using the strategies in the cash management system and you're using the strategies with Sustainable Wealth Secrets, then it's likely you're getting big chunks of money here and there from investment proceeds, from real estate transactions, from even your bonuses at the end of the year. So $60,000 is not going to last very long. And if it's $15,000 or $20,000, it's not going to go anywhere. You might earn that in a month. But here's the deal. It's there in one giant lump, and you've been thinking in the back of your head, my computer's kind of slow, or I've been thinking about this car, or I'd really like to get that boat. So the best thing to do is simply to set the money aside according to your cash management plan. Now, what are we talking about with the cash management plan? Cash management plan might be a budget system, like the bucket system or reserve systems. Maybe you get that large chunk of cash and you use it to fully fund your reserve accounts for your emergency fund, for long-term capital expenses on homes. You might do it to fully fund your insurance policies. The principle that determines what are you doing here is based on how can you take that cash and use it to increase future cash flow or otherwise acquire assets that cash flow. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you receive a lump sum of money. Doesn't matter where it comes from. In fact, I would hope that you would have multiple streams that will give you lump sums of money over the year. We can teach you how to do that, but here's the deal. Let's say you get $50,000. You got a $50,000 check in front of you. The first thing you're going to do is deposit it into an investment account. I want you to stick that into the most difficult and awkward account that you have. If you have not fully funded your 401k, your IRA, your different types of qualified retirement accounts that have some kind of tax benefit, then you might put that on the list. Now, I didn't say you send a check to them. I say you deposit the check that you received into a money market account that has got some kind of interest rate on it. And you're not even going to invest it, but you're going to then start making a list of all the different things that you could possibly do with this money, including topping off your HSA account, topping off your 401k, topping off your Roth IRA or traditional IRA, depending on your situation. It might be putting money in a reserve fund for your emergency fund for your household. It could be putting money aside for a new roof that you have in a couple years. It could be putting money aside for a car that's on a replacement cycle. It could also be putting aside money for your kids' school or a vacation for your family. Again, we're making a list, so it could be anything. You could write on your list, spend all the money on cocaine and hookers. But it doesn't mean we're going to do it. So this is a list of all the possible options. When people find out that you got a big lump sum of money, God forbid you win the lottery or something, if they're going to come out of the woodwork, you can put them on the list as well. What we're doing here is we're queuing up all the possible opportunities for this money just to get it out of our system. Okay. Wealthy people, people who build sustainable wealth, they aren't going to blow the money. They have a place for the money. In fact, your cash management plan might say, for example, if you're using a bucket reserve system, the money has come in, 10% is going into your wealth account, 10% is going to your charitable giving account, 20% is going to debt reduction or investments. You may already have allocations for that money to get it into your ecosystem of financial wealth, and that money gets put in there. But still, make the list because it's going to be tempting. Because I got a check here for $60,000. An investor had just sold a property. They paid out some cash, and I'm thinking, you know what? I got this portfolio of debt. I'd really like to get a faster computer to do video editing and stuff, but I don't actually do a lot of video editing already, and my computer really isn't that bad. And so all these ideas are going to be in your head. Once you put them on paper, you give yourself maybe a 48-hour window to jot down everything you might do with this money. You can now not think about what you're going to do with the money. It's gone. The money is still clearing the bank. And by the way, a $50,000 check might take 5 to 10 days to clear the bank, so you don't have to be in a hurry. But here's the deal. You've got this list. Now that you've had a little time to sleep on it, you can take yourself a big fat black magic marker, and you can take your list, or a red marker, and you can cross out the ridiculous stuff. So you might have cocaine and hookers. Does that have any long-term value or any long-term consequences to avoid? Well, it doesn't really have any long-term value. Once the cocaine's through your system and you're done being high, it's gone. Up your nose and gone. That's where that saying comes from. What kind of risks are associated with that? Well, you could get some kind of disease, or you could get some drug charge, or you can get in trouble just trying to buy the drugs, or, all kinds of bad stuff can happen. Now, I'm giving you an exaggerated example. The majority of my subscribers are not going to get cocaine and hookers, but I'm just saying it might have been an idea that you go to Vegas and go gambling and double your money, and then you're going through the same exercise. What is the short-term value? What's the long-term value? What are any risks associated with that decision? And most of the things on your list, you're going to be able to put a big fat black line through them, and you're just not going to do it. Your car is reasonable, it works well, and you weren't planning to get a new vehicle anyway, so cross it off the list. Now, it's going to be harder to make that decision when it comes to debt reduction. By reducing debt, you actually might increase your cash flow. So you reduce the debt on fixed payment items, and now you have that fixed cash available. Reducing your debt might save you on interest payments or expenses associated with interest. And there's a lot of reasons that Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey and those folks will give you to reduce your debt. However, does reducing your debt have a long-term asset value or a means of increasing your cash flow over time? You might increase your cash flow in the short term and then bundle together those payments into a larger lump sum payment that reduces your overall debt in a shorter period. But again, you might also be able to take $20,000 out of your $50,000 to buy a investment property, and that investment property then cash flows while the tenant is paying down the mortgage, and ultimately end up with an asset that cash flows. You might take that money and take half of it and invest it across a balanced portfolio in index funds at the stock market, so that you're getting a 4 to 7% return on that money while you're getting ready for something else, maybe accumulating additional funds to do another activity. Maybe your cost of capital is 3 to 4% because you've been using our debt management plan, and you've actually bundled debt over time, and your actual debt is securing assets that cash flow, and your cash flow is greater than the obligation on that debt. And so paying it off really doesn't have a lot of immediate value because you're using debt to control the asset, not necessarily debt to own the asset. Ultimately, there's a lot of categories to look at here. Do you have student loans? Do you have relationships? Maybe you borrowed money from an individual and you'd much rather pay it back. Do you owe your lawyer any money? And if you pay your lawyer off Then you don't have to worry about somebody who has the means to coming after you in the future. There's this big list, and if you go through each item on the list, cross off the ones that are ridiculous, you might highlight a few that make sense for your situation. See, when you get a lump sum of money, it is not cut and dry. It is not as easy as going to the popular blog or the popular website or listening to a podcast and getting a definitive answer on what to do with your money. You may even take a percentage of that money and sit down with your CPA, a fee-based financial planner, or someone else who does not sell securities and stocks. See, one of the reasons that I can talk with you about money as a reporter is I'm reporting possibilities for you. I'm not prescribing what you should do. I'm not offering investment advice. I'm not a financial planner, and I don't know your situation. But ultimately, by gathering the information up front, crossing off the things that are ridiculous, the things that don't matter, you don't know how to double your money in the stock market, so you cross that off. You're not a good gambler, you cross that off. You set aside $2,500 for a vacation, you still have about $4,500 left. You have $47,500 left. But the point I'm making here is you're giving yourself the time to make a valid decision. Now you've narrowed your big list of items. Maybe you had 20 items and now you're down to 5. That list of 5 has eliminated all the distractions of what other people want you to do with your money and has now narrowed down to what is best for you to do with that money. Meanwhile, the funds are in a secure place. They're maybe gaining some interest. You can put them in a balanced portfolio if you already had a balanced portfolio. You can put some of it in there, maintaining enough liquidity. See, a cash management plan is going to identify how much liquidity do you need? How much do you need for your base checking accounts to cover your month-to-month bills? What do you need for your debt obligations? And it is quite possible that the cash management plan alone will consume the whole 60, the whole 50, the whole $100,000, and you don't have any of this to worry about. But here's something on the side I want you to think about. We made the list. We crossed off the things that were ridiculous. We highlighted the things that sound like they have good short-term, midterm, and long-term value for both your financial position, your cash flow, and your long-term interests. But guess what I'm going to give you some advice for? If you take 5% of that money that you received and set it in what I call a kiss my ass fund. I know, folks. Shave the money off the top, put it in a kiss my ass fund. There will be some desire to just blow a little bit of that money. So why not have a fund set aside for money you can blow? And this way you get it out of your system. We made the big list to get all the ideas out on paper and get those out of the system. We've narrowed them down to 4 or 5 options, but you're probably not going to need all that money for the 4 or 5 options. So why not go out and have a nice dinner? Why not get a small gift for a family member? A lot of times you'll have family members nagging you about, hey, you just got this big windfall of money and I'd like to get a little something, something here. So send them $100 for Christmas. The key here of what we're doing here is we're trying to satisfy both that animal desire to splurge a little bit and that necessary but less and weaker desire for long-term future prosperity. See, we are taking care of ourselves today, ourselves tomorrow, and our future self long down the line. So it may be practical to top off your Roth IRAs if you qualify, 401ks, HSA accounts, and all these other things. But it may not be necessary to put all of the money there. It may be 5 things that you're going to do with the funds instead of just that one big thing that you were searching for. And that's how you find this podcast because, obviously the internet's going to know what to do with your money. But ultimately, folks, as a high-income professional, an entrepreneur, someone who's earning 6 figures and better, what if you lost your job? How far would $60,000 go? Well, it might not go very far at all. It might only go a couple months. Looking at my situation, looking at some of my clients' situations, we can have $10,000 to $15,000 in costs every month and still be living frugally. Still be living like you feel, you have that feeling that, I'm not really buying nice stuff. I shop at Goodwill. I have reasonable cars. I'm barely able to save for retirement. you have a burden of knowledge being a part of the Sustainable Wealth Secrets family, that you know that $2.3 million, even $3 million is not enough for retirement if you want a six-figure income. Remember, for every $1 million in cash or principal that you have in the bank, you're going to spin off maybe $40,000. So if you have $2 million in the bank, you're only going to spin off $80,000. And then after taxes, you could be receiving less net than you receive now. And if you can't live off of what you get today, when inflation and taxes and all these other things come along, how will you survive in the future? So I want to leave you with something very specific. The list of possibilities is going to be much longer and help get you gain clarity about what to do with your money. And frankly, I don't want you to send the money. I'm going to tell you to invest in education, and this is the education right here. You ultimately will narrow that list down to 3 to 5 things that you can do with those funds. And then you're going to execute on those things. Each of those things you'll have the confidence to know that you've secured yourself in case of a sudden job loss. You've secured your position in the future by building out retirement. You've gained a cushion so that debt obligations are addressed, and maybe you've removed some high interest debts and you shift some things around. Maybe you've used it as a down payment to buy an investment property that cash flows for you, but also reserved enough funds for capital expenses associated with the property so that you can bring it up to date and keep it up to date. I have a rental property right now that needs closet doors. So I would set aside funds for that as well. You want to make sure that you're covering your children's well-being and education, but not at the expense of your long-term well-being and education. It's better to invest the time. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't think about. It's better to invest the time in teaching your child these strategies that I'm teaching you, so that they can have their own prosperity, so that when they get ready for college, they can make college decisions without going into debt. Maybe they do a trade school. They do 2 years of community college, then they do trade school. Maybe you get time to get to know your child so that you can understand their interests and help them along the way there, rather than just throwing money at the situation. You're going to convert a lot of that money into sustainable that confidence, that feeling, that knowing that you are in the right position doing the right things. And again, making the list, removing the absurd ideas or the ideas that just aren't going to be right for you, narrowing that list down to 3 to 5 items, then taking just a little tiny bit of money, $50, and go out to dinner. Have a little bit nicer than average sandwich and just treat yourself. That kiss my ass fund that's just got to be a little set aside money to do the splurges. Because a lot of those things you crossed off your list might be fun. It might be fun to go do a weekend in Vegas. But is it the right thing to do with this lump sum? Just because you have a lump sum of money doesn't mean it enables you to do anything else. That money, in fact, is just a temporary state of liquidity. It isn't a long-term state of liquidity. So how do we get there? How do we get that lump sum into your system, which we call the cash management plan, so that we increase net cash flow now and in the future? We also build up a balanced investment portfolio that spins off passive income. We've reduced debt in a way that we don't compromise our control opportunities. We don't compromise our cash flow opportunities by lowering our interest rates so much that we got a bunch of little tiny fixed rate loans that require a heavy payment every month. It's a lot to think about. But when you follow this plan, what we've gone is from chaos to focus. And from that focus, you can now take action and specifically do what is necessary to turn that $50,000 into $100,000, that $60,000 into $120,000 or $200,000, and to be prepared and ready should economic conditions change in the near term. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets. You can visit us at www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com. Now remember, your mastermind team, which is going to be your CPA, your fee-based financial planner, and even your lawyer. If you do receive a lump sum distribution, you do want to talk about the tax consequences associated with that. So yes, while you're going to have a little kiss my ass fund, you're also going to include a little fund for your tax reserve, because depending on your situation, that cash proceeds may have tax consequences that it's better to be aware of up front rather than in the future. And of course, nothing I've shared with here is specific financial advice for your situation, because unless you're a private client, I have no idea what you're doing, and I'm not selling any stocks, or I'm not a broker, I'm not a financial planner or anything like that. I'm a regular guy just like you guys, a business analyst who looks at the situation in more of a process, and I've shared that process with you here. But if you have any questions about this or anything else I cover in these podcasts, you can always visit me at www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com. Again, I'm Justin Hinton. I'm here to help high-income professionals and entrepreneurs build wealth that takes care of them, build a lifestyle, and increase their prosperity in all ways. Thanks for listening.